Welcome to another edition of the Mael Time Podcast. I'm joined today by Jon Legarda. He is former soldier back in the day and now video producer, does amazing stuff on Instagram and other mediums, and is now an Israel advocate. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So I had to reach out to you after I saw your viral response to Haaretz's really a blood libel the other day when they said that I think the quote was, it's a killing field, and that Israel is intentionally targeting civilians near the aid site. For those who did not see your video response, could you elaborate a bit on what you said and why Haaretz got it so wrong?
So basically they made this article with very, very extreme claims. And if you have such an extreme claim, give us some proof, give us some backing to what you're saying. Everything they had were Hamas numbers, were anonymous sources, not even names, no ranks, no nothing. So basically no way, no breadcrumbs to actually check what they're saying. It was basically, in a nutshell, trust me, bro. That's what it was. And then when you try to check what Hamas is saying and the Gazans, you see a whole lot of footage. I did a video about these claims in the beginning of June, like the 1st of June, 2nd of June, I think it was. And again, it was the first time that we're saying that Israel is just killing civilians freely in the lines to the new aid centers run by the GHF. And they have footage of people in the street talking about it. And they have the carts with the bodies. And they have the doctors talking about it. But then, obviously, BBC posted about it, Washington Post, and then they had to retract because it was all a lie, which means that everybody talking in the street, all the doctors were just repeating a lie that would never happen. And they've been saying the same libel every single day. Every single day, apparently, the IDF is just shooting civilians waiting for the food. For now, I mean, we're already in July. So for a whole month, every single day, this has been happening according to Hamas-run media.
And all that Hamas did was perfectly fine and well, and everything that Hamas did in terms of stealing aid was fine, and that's not challenged in the same way. It's only challenged because it's a collaborator organization that works with Israel.
I saw somebody talking about this, and I kind of agree with it. Hamas has not been technically stealing the aid. Hamas is the government in Gaza. They've been taking the aid Hamas is the one in charge of taking the aid, them and UNRWA. The fact that they don't give it to their own people, that is all we should be talking about. But Hamas is not stealing it. Hamas is the one in charge of taking it and distributing it. They're just not doing it because they're a terror organization running a country, a territory, a state, whatever you want to call Gaza. So yeah, it's insane. So in the beginning of June, the JHS said, look, there has been no shooting. Here's the footage of the place and the time. See, everybody's just taking food freely, nothing happened. And then we actually have footage of Hamas shooting their own people in a different state and in a different area that they were giving out aid. So we're saying, hey, Hamas is blaming us on what they are doing. Here's the footage. Look at them do it. And ever since, the same claims. So Haaretz is basically repeating them without any actual proof, without any actual reliable sources, without anything. So that really pissed me off. I read the article. I went to check what they're saying. I went to try to see any breadcrumbs. I haven't found any. Then they repeated it, and they went over it again. And they said, look, IDF just released a statement admitting this. And I went to the statement, and I read it. They didn't admit it. They didn't repeat it. So that really pissed me off. They really pissed me off.
And they only mention, you mentioned that not mentioning names, they mention Brigadier General Yehuda Vach. And they only mention him, I will say. It is my belief that because he's right-wing, he is religious, and he wears a kippah, they target him as some sort of anomaly in the army from that perspective. And there's been, and you see this with the coverage of David Zini as well, where they say they have messianic views, that they are extremists for being religious. And therefore, the coverage, it's very curious that that's the only person they mentioned, I should say.
That's
and
they previously, by name,
by name. And they previously actually made a huge hit piece on him. It was actually titled Vach's Private Army, the Growing Gap Between the IDF and Rogue Commanders. And they essentially accused him of getting his own soldiers killed. And this has been a continuous stream of attack against one person.
I haven't read up too much about Vach. I think if I can recall in that article, the first article, they don't even interview him or take him as a source. It's somebody saying his name in some sort of context, if I recall correctly. I never read up on Bach too much before. I've seen his name before, but I haven't gone too much into it. But Haaretz, after I've been digging into them for the past year and a half, as I've been digging to most channels here in Israel, there's something that you notice. So first of all, I figured out that in November of 2023, they tried to remove, there was a little discussion between the people who own Haaretz, and one of them wanted to remove the word Jewish when they mention Israel, like Israel, the Jewish democratic state, so just say democratic state and not Jewish. Then you had the publisher saying that Palestinian terrorists are freedom fighters. So you start piecing together and you see that they take Hamas numbers as proof, as exact numbers. They always say it's Hamas numbers, but they use them as an exact science. They say the things that I just told you. So they're basically, there's no way else to put it. They're an anti-Zionist Israeli newspaper. So obviously they will try to take everything that is Jewish and try to demonize it in a way.
And it's really a shame because they do have some good reporters there. Like Amir Tibon is good, even though I don't agree with him on most things. And there's other people who are genuinely trying to talk about issues in a serious way. And when it comes to the news coverage and what they choose to cover and how they go about these things, it's really reprehensible. I know the Vach family. Yeah,
Haaretz for decades was, I think, the best newspaper here in Israel. Was the most reliable one. All the best writers used to go to Haaretz. I don't know what happened these past years or decade or whatever, but yeah, it's not what it was anymore. Some people, when you go to people are a generation above us, like 50s, 60s, even right-wing people at that age still read Haaretz because they remember what it was. But people our age, I don't know how old you are, but like 30s, 20s. And,
I'm 32.
I'm 34 since like 2 days ago. But yeah, we don't take, thank you very much. We don't take Haaretz as they do anymore because we are experiencing the new Haaretz.
What was the reaction on the street in Israel when that article was published? Because again, I will just also add that it's not as if there's like except for the Haredim, it's not like there isn't. Everyone knows someone who's in Gaza in that way. Everyone's participating in this war, so you're basically accusing the bulk of Israeli society of just randomly shooting people as a policy.
Yeah, well, street-wise, I live in Tel Aviv, and you have here a lot of people going out to the street and screaming that, there's a very fringe extremist talking that Israel is doing a genocide. There's a kind of half majority that are just against the war itself, but not as extreme as the other ones I just mentioned. So streetwise, not a lot of people here criticize Haaretz. They still see Haaretz as one of the best newspapers. But in like WhatsApp groups of people of influence, of people who do advocacy for Israel, people who are in any way, shape, or form knowledgeable about what's actually going on in Gaza, they were really pissed off. But most of the reactions are like, oh my God, here we go, Haaretz again. Like, nobody takes them seriously anymore. Nobody's surprised about it anymore. It's just another, like, dagger to the back, basically. So the reason I started doing advocacy after October 7th is because I grew up in Spain. I lived there for many years, and I know exactly what people outside of Israel hear, what they see. That's why my first viral video was Dear Pro-Palestinians. I was trying to talk to the other side, saying like, look, I know you have good intentions, but when you say intifada, this is what it means. When you say for the Rebbe to see, this is what it means. Because I know that there's a lot of misinformation outside. And then when you see a newspaper here in Israel repeating the same misinformation, putting a megaphone to Hamas, that just really, it feels like is that guy in the back an English phrase? It's
yes, you're stabbed in the back, yeah.
Like we'd be stabbed in the back by people who live here. But then you realize that even though we just mentioned everybody knows somebody in Gaza, the sad reality is apparently not everybody has, because there's a lot of people, even here in Israel, we're like an hour and a half drive from Gaza, and there's a lot of people who don't have any friends, don't have any anybody who they know inside of Gaza who served in Gaza, and they're completely detached. They just read Haaretz. They just watch very, very left-sided news, and they really think. I have a friend of those in the dog park when I take my dog to walk, who she really thinks Israel's just murdering kids and Israel's doing a genocide. I mean, some people here in the center who don't suffer, were not attacked on October 7th, or don't have any family or friends that were affected, are really disconnected, even here in Israel. It's really, really disappointing.
It's also worth noting that the social consequence of saying these kinds of things is pretty limited in Israel. Yeah, you might get people saying something nasty to you on the street if they recognize you, or something online, but you're allowed to say these things in a democracy. Whereas when you go to Gaza, if someone were to come out and go on the street or make a video and say, here I am in Khan Yunis and I hate Hamas and everybody should come and free us from Hamas, there's a pretty good chance that by the time that person finishes the video, they'll be dead. So it's just not even the same playing field, because they're using the same tools that people in Israel would use, but they are very limited, and there's a unified message because the only message that's allowed to be put out is one that is spreading straight propaganda. I think the point you're raising is one of the most important points that we should be able to see and put a bigger weight on right now. Because, like you said, the difference, Israel is a free democratic state. There's free speech here. That's why you have places like Haaretz, breaking the silence, standing together. All of those are just repeating Hamas propaganda. But they can do whatever they want. They can go to the street and they can scream it. They can post it. They are able to. They're free to do so. Just like you have extremist rights who say horrible psychotic things. You are able to say whatever you want. In Gaza, you don't have that freedom. They break your bones, they break your legs, they break your feet, they break your face, they kill you, they shoot you. These things happen, and I also have been talking about that. So when somebody in Gaza has the ball, I'm sorry, can I talk about Yeah, you can use that. Or yeah, it's good.
Yeah, has the balls to actually speak out against a regime that can, in few hours, just go to your house and throw you from the roof, like they've been doing for the past few months, and well, they do it for the past 16 years, but moreover, you should really pay attention to this. But moreover, when you hear people from Gaza that are now outside of Gaza talking, a lot of those people still have family in Gaza. A lot of people still have close ones, friends, and they don't feel comfortable talking freely because they know. For example, I used to work in a very famous network here in Israel called the Kan 11. I won't specify too many names or dates or places, but the Kan 11 also has like a department in Haifa, and they are not free to do any videos they want. That's the Arabic part of Kan 11, the Arabic department, and they have said, many of them, that sometimes they want to do a video in Arabic about some Jewish holiday or any national thing because they're in Israel. And they get threats, and people go to the offices, and people threaten their families. And I mean, this happens even here in Israel to people who live in Haifa inside of Israel, the state. So over there, if you're a Gazan that's moved away from Gaza, you're in Europe, United States, whatever, and you talk a certain way, you're still afraid because things can happen to your family. So I have been trying to say for the past months, I'm trying to find the voices of people who have grown in Gaza, have a lot of experience in Gaza, and don't have family there anymore, don't have nothing to lose. And I found like 3 or 4 voices like that around the world. And those are the voices who are free to speak their minds about the reality over there. And we should hear those voices. So,
and what have they said to you?
Not only me, I mean, they talk publicly. Here in Israel, I think one of them talks in English. The most extremist one is Musab Hassan Yosef, okay? He has experience, but he has nothing more to lose. He's already said everything. You have 2 in Israel who even, I think, converted to Judaism. They grew up in Gaza.
I've seen those videos. You know, I just had Peter Beinart on the podcast. I don't agree with him on anything. You know, if he told me that today is Wednesday, I would have to double check that. Yeah. And he said some pretty vicious things about Israel's conduct in Gaza, but. You know, and I made this point to him. I've reached out to hundreds of people in Gaza, whether that's through Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, to try to have anybody engage on my show here, and I can't get anyone to do it. They'll say, "Oh, you're a Nazi collaborator. You have all these things." So it's unfortunate because they're not even. I think there's a genuine fear that if they were to even talk to someone that they disagree with, or be seen publicly associating, even in a huge disagreement, that they would somehow be crossing the party line. That's how extreme it is. Because I'm just saying, I don't care if you come on and you tell me that Israel's the worst thing ever. I just want to hear what your perspective is. They won't even do that.
Yeah. We need to have these talks. I have no problem talking to anybody in the extreme right or left if their stance, if what they think is based on actual facts and reality. I have no problem with that. And I think right now in Israel, that's one of the things we're missing. We're missing a strong left and actually a real right. Right now, the right wing of Israel is not really right per se. But we're missing also a bridge between the two. People are not talking anymore. People are...
Yeah, I think especially the media landscape between Channel 12, 13, 14, if half the country that they won't believe anything that 14 says, and the other half of the country won't believe anything that 12 or 13 says. And you end up having these conversations that really are just going by each other's ears.
As someone who follows and watches 11, 12, 13, 14, Haaretz and Wine and all those, if you only watch 11 and 12 and you hear what they say about 14, they seem like lunatics because they will obviously take the snippets and the parts where they say something idiotic. And when you watch 14, you think that 12 are extremist leftists that want Israel to burn because they choose only the snippets and the parts where Channel 12 messes up. So obviously, if somebody from the right says, I watch 14, oh, you're extremist, you're a messianic, whatever the hell, and somebody, so it's there's no way of talking because none of them actually try to watch more than 30 seconds of the other one's perspective.
Exactly. And I'm trying to remember the name. If I look 1 second, the name. Oh, it was Asaf Agmon. Okay, so Asaf Agmon, his grandson fell in combat. He was a very big leader, is a very big leader in the Kaplan movement, everything like this. And I don't agree with him on just about anything. His grandson died tragically in Lebanon, and I quoted something he said about the responsibility of the IDF and people that are in charge to make sure that the rules of combat are followed and you're not putting people in unsafe situations unnecessarily. And I had people responding to me saying, how can you quote Asaf Agmon? I said, I'm not quoting Asaf Agmon about anything else. I'm talking about this one issue. There's a point of agreement, but because it was Asaf Agmon, they weren't even willing to accept it. And then on the other side, the same thing is true. So if you quote something, if Yair Netanyahu says something that is right, I'll have people on the left say, oh my God, what a crazy person. I'm like, excuse me, I'm not saying you have to agree on every single thing he's ever said in his entire life.
Look, I can give you the most viral example is Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro is a very divided, I mean, for example, I don't agree anything about that he says about when he talks, for example, about abortion. Nothing. But when he talks about Israel, he has a lot of facts, and he's a very good debater. And some people say, no, I'm not going to watch anything by Shapiro.
You're setting me up there. I'd say he does have a lot of facts when it comes to the abortion debate, but you might not agree with them. But he was my first boss, so I'm going to say I did used to.
Oh, sure. No problem. I mean,
I get your point.
A lot of these opinions are based on facts. 100%.
Yes, but they tried to get him disinvited from the torchlighting. I mean, absurd.
Look, the torchlighting is very political, and it was also this year. It was very. There was a lot of emotion here in Israel. There was a lot of things: who to choose, yes to choose, not to choose. I mean, I think we should have lit the torches, but people chose not to. So, okay, I'll respect it. No problem.
Right. I'm just saying, people trying to get him disinvited from.
Yeah, but even people who I know, when I share things about Ben Shapiro, when he's actually talking facts about Israel, and they say, "Oh no, but this guy is this and that." Look, I agree. When he talks about certain subjects, I don't agree. I don't like it either. But now he's saying things. I mean, people have a lot of opinions about a lot of things. It's not the same subject. It's not the same situation. It's not the same debate. I mean, no one is just white or black. You know what I mean? So yeah,
absolutely. And I
listen to the content of what the people are saying.
It's tough because, for example, I truly believe that, for example, Tucker Carlson is engaging with some of the biggest anti-Semites in the world today and is promoting these ideas, is spreading anti-Semitic concepts, for example, the USS Liberty, and trying to say that Israel did this intentionally, and all sorts of very heinous conspiracy theories that are not good for Jewish people and certainly not good for the state of Israel. At the same time, I used to love Tucker Carlson, and I used to love his show when it was on Fox. I think he had good intellectual discussions about very important issues, and now I'm reconciling the concept that he might very well be an anti-Semite. That's not an easy thing to try to go back. But again, look, I'm not going to sit here and throw out every single thing he's ever said about any subject.
Yeah.
It just happens.
Look, I will listen to somebody who is anti-Semite again if what he says is based on actual facts. And this is also a very interesting point, because I used to follow, for example, a lot of people before October 7th on TikTok that I thought were like showing truth or talking about conspiracies, which is not really conspiracies. I don't know. I think one of them was called Cancel This Shirt Company or something like that. And he used to talk about trying to find the money where all the products in the shops were coming from, and like clicking everything like BlackRock. And I'm like, oh, I mean, this guy's interesting. He's actually doing research. And then all of these creators, I start hearing them talk about Israel and the Gazan conflicts. And that was something that I was diving into very deeply, looking at both sides, looking at things, what Hamas is saying, what IDF is saying, what the channels 11 to 14, what BBC is saying. I mean, I really dove into the whole scope. And then I see how they do their research. And I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe the other things that they said, I can't trust either, because if this is how they do their research about this topic, so maybe I cannot trust the other topic. So I don't care about their opinion. I care about how they choose their information, what information they choose to gather. That's what I care about. The opinions that they make out of it, we can talk about it until next year. But if it's based on actual reality, that's what I need to know.
Right. It's a very good point.
If you gather all the information, you hear this side, you see that side, you see the IDF footage and the Hamas, you see everything, and then you have a different opinion than me, great, let's talk about it. That could be a good information. But if you say, oh, everything that Israel says is false, it's propaganda, and everything that Hamas says is the truth. Nah, man, come on.
Right, and there's this...
Show me why.
There's this very big tendency now where it's essentially everything just becomes conspiracy. So there's always some angle. I actually was listening to these vile anti-Semites yesterday on X. They had one of those X spaces, and these guys are very plugged in with what's going on in Gaza. And they're basically saying that when Trump makes a proposal to have a ceasefire, that is essentially a surrender agreement, and there's no way that any Arab should ever accept this, because you'd be surrendering to Western imperialism and leaving the interests of the Gazan people behind. But this is the kind of stuff that they're saying, and it's basically just assuming that there's some sort of giant conspiracy on behalf of the United States and Israel.
Yeah, because they don't actually...
But again, this is the kind of stuff they're propagating. Yeah. It's not based on anything.
Going on the ground. Look, it's the same theories about Nakba and everything.
Well, I'll say this, it's different, because the thing is that, and this is actually, I don't know if you saw Douglas Murray's discussion with Dave Smith when he had the whole thing with Piers Morgan. I mean, with Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan?
But
I heard the podcast.
Okay, so I actually thought that Douglas lost. And the reason I thought that Douglas lost is because it's not even enough to be there. Because you could have a Hamas operative who's there in Gaza and might spread lies on Al Jazeera. And that just because he's there does not mean that he has a better set of facts than someone who's objectively looking into the situation. So it's a little bit more complicated than even just being there. Personally,
obviously, it's more complicated. It's not a 100% truth, black or white. But I think the point was that I did agree with the general point, is that if you're making a subject your 24/7, you're in 9 to 5, and you have a lot of influence on thousands of people, the minimum you could do is be in the general area, have been there, talk to the people, know the people,
100%.
Have seen the things you're talking about. The minimum. I mean, if you want to have opinion on something, but it's just an opinion, sure. But if you actually take this and talk about it for months, I don't know for how long the Smith guy has been talking about it, but I mean, ever since that podcast, I've seen him talking a lot about it in front of a lot of people. You've never even been to even to Tel Aviv. Even to Tel Aviv. I'm not talking about Gaza and the war and be a journalist. Even to Tel Aviv. You know what I mean? And you're taking this. So you couldn't even make your own opinion by having your experience. You are making your opinion by somebody else who wrote something about somebody else who's in the field. You know what I mean? It's so many
100%.
filters of information. So I think that basic point I agree with. But obviously it doesn't mean that everybody here in Tel Aviv knows what's going on. Obviously
Correct.
not.
So, right.
But
so
the minimum, have some experience on the ground.
Right. So I would say experience on the ground or have a real interest in talking to people who are there and actually engaging in it, not just picking things up off of Al Jazeera or some Instagram video, because
100%.
that's the other thing. Like, you can make videos look, I mean, you're a professional videographer. You can make things look really crazy and it's not really the full story. So that's the other part, which I'm not really sure why some of these influencers and others can't understand that. But there could be a child who is on the verge of dying in Gaza, and Hamas very well might have injured them or done something that put them directly in harm's way. That doesn't mean that it's less sad or that it's less tragic or that it shouldn't evoke sympathy. But just because you see a picture of a child or a family in Gaza looking like they're in a bad situation does not immediately mean that they have just been attacked by Israel. And I don't know why that's so hard for all these people to understand. I really have no idea.
There's so many nuances, so many details. For example, if we talk about the other side, you have a lot of Gazans posting videos of their cafes and the restaurants and eating cheesecake and hot chocolate and all that stuff. And people here are saying, look, the Gazans are not starving. Not exactly. In the center of Gaza, like you take the north side of the center camps where the IDF still hasn't been, that's where you see all that footage. That's where people are still living everyday life rather normally. And they do those videos to show like resilience to the Arab country. That's why all those videos are in Arabic, having Arabic music. But when you go to the rest of the places, the north and the south need to go to aid centers to get food. So this is not the reality of all of Gaza, and this is not the reality of all of Gaza. And like you said, when you see somebody, okay, the best example, you see the pictures and the footage of like a whole neighborhood that's been, that's in rubbles. The first thing you think, oh yeah, the IDF just came and airstruck everything. No. You know what percentage of buildings in Gaza are booby-trapped by the Gazans? You know what percentage of these buildings have been hit because they fire RPGs from their own buildings and they hit another building? You know how many? I mean, so you just have so many reasons of why these buildings are hit. Many of the buildings are airstruck. Many of the buildings are dismantled by the IDF because they don't want to go through a booby-trapped building, so they have to make their own entrances to not die. So we have so many reasons, but the go-to in the beginning, like I said, you see rubble, IDF airstrike. That's it. No. A lot of them, the Gazans broke. A lot of them, the IDF broke. It's not just black or white. And these are the things that most people don't realize.
Absolutely.
So
and
yeah,
I just wanna,
the war is very nuanced.
Yeah, it's really crazy, and I admire, I have a lot of respect for what you're doing on social media and putting out these awesome videos. Have there been any real serious discussions that have emerged from some of your Instagram videos that you are comfortable sharing?
For good and for bad. For example, mostly in the beginning, now a bit less sadly, but like now it happens once every 2 weeks. In the beginning it used to happen almost daily that people, pro-Palestinians, actually used to send me a message. Look, I had no idea. You seem like kind of a, how do you say, like a middle ground guy.
Normal person, middle, yeah.
I wouldn't say normal, but somebody that's not like extreme.
Fair and balanced,
like, yeah. Balanced guy. But what do you say about the kids dying in Gaza? What do you say about this article? So they actually started conversations with me. Somebody who doesn't like Israel, who thinks Israel's doing all the bad things, back in the end of 2003, beginning of 2024. So that used to happen a lot. Now it happens less. Now it happens maybe once every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. Somebody puts like a comment to one of my videos and I respond with actual facts. Like, yeah, but they falsified. Well, they didn't falsify. This is what happened, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we continue talking in private. But what also happens a lot is people who are actually, or rather Jewish or Zionists, that live abroad in Germany, in England, in the United States, wherever it is. And they tell me, look, I go to work. Most of the people in my office are anti-Israel. And they hate Israel and they see the news. And one time I showed them one of your videos responding to something that happened. And they're like, oh my God, I had no idea. And then they became less extreme. So that's also some of the reactions and conversations that I get. And if somebody that follows me is listening to me right now, there's a lot of you sending me every single article, every single day. I can respond to everything. I try to respond to most things because I see the effect that it does to people. And on the third hand, I also talk about that we shouldn't be only reacting to others saying, because the problem with Israeli advocacy is that they claim, we prove. They claim, we react. So it becomes a game of cat and mouse where they are just leading the way. They can make up whatever lie they want. And we have to actually do the research and check and fact check and ask. And by the moment we release the actual proof, they already said 10 more things. So
and it takes away vital resources and efforts from things we're doing constructively. It makes us just focus on frankly stupid things because we're sitting there trying to prove to the world that that Jewish people are not evil. So it's not really a good use of time.
Exactly, because we're following a lead of people saying Jews are evil. So we're following that lead and we're saying, no, we're not. We're reacting to that. And actual research takes time and effort. And a lie takes imagination in 2 minutes.
Exactly.
So,
and it gets around a lot faster than the truth. So have you heard the thing with the flour now? With the pills? Yes. I did see that.
Yeah.
Yes. Again, all of these things that are just totally insane. And there's a never-ending rabbit hole. If you just spend 10 minutes on X and you see all these lies and lies and lies and lies and lies.
Oh, I can't with X. Yeah, I can't. X is so much for me.
Exactly. Me too. So, Jon, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so
for
much
those
for
who want to check you out on Instagram, what's your handle?
So it's not very intuitive to our English speakers, but Legarda Jon, Legardaion. You can also look for me on TikTok. I have a new project now called Heroes of Zion. It's a podcast. It's on YouTube, it's on Spotify, and it's on Apple Podcast, which I bring actual people who have been in the field, fighters, commanders that have been in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Judea and Samaria, and tell you the truth firsthand that they have seen, because we're talking right now about all these news and all these titles. So I want to bring people who actually been there and tell you what they see, what they did, the truth on the ground. So that's called Heroes of Zion. You can find that on YouTube. You can find it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And
I hope everyone checks it out. If you made it this far in the podcast, you definitely like that stuff. We've had a lot of similar type things here. So I hope that people will also check out what you're doing there. And
so
offline, I have some people I could probably put you in touch with. So, best of luck.